and welcome to this, the final part 5. And my rig is together. I've sorted out what I want to use and how I want to set it up. So it's just a case now of going up into the loft. But just before that, I will add my chosen items to the SmallRig frame. So this is the setup that I've concluded is the best for me to use. I've tried the iPhone on its own. What I did was I got my wife to read a poem, which I'll include at the end of the video, and I split the poem into 4 and did the first part with just the iPhone, then the iPhone with the Rode mic plugged in. Then I did the Rode mic with the Olympus, and then the Rode mic with the Sony. And from my very basic audio test, I concluded that the iPhone on its own, the sound was quite quiet and a little bit noisy. Adding the Rode mic marginally made it more full-bodied, but nothing significant. When I then used the Olympus with the Rode, it was considerably better, and then with the Sony it was even better again. It was just seemed a bit more full-bodied, very clear. So I prefer the Sony with the Rode. The only problem with that obviously is you will need to sync the audio, but then you get 2 sources of audio because the iPhone will be running and the Sony will be running. So if something went wrong, I'd still end up with some audio because one of them will be recording. But it gives me more options. So the way I've done the cage is I took one of these screws, which is like 2¼ inches. I popped a washer on the back of that and then screwed that on to the back of the Sony. I then took 2 tap washers, which gives me a bit of a cushion so I don't damage the sound recorder, because obviously I want it pointing forward. So I can just tighten it about there. The washers will hold that, so that seems okay. I'm then going to add my phone, like so. Then the Rode mic, so that can pop in there. And then using the standard cable, I mean this method does mean you don't need the SC7 or the other 2 cables. So this is just the standard cable. I can plug that in like so. That's my audio part set up, and my light can go on the other cold shoe like so. Pop my battery in, and I think that's quite a tidy little setup. So I'm quite pleased with that. And the other thing with the light is if you fold it down, it protects the microphone from hitting the whatever you put the rig onto. So it's better to be able to just fold that down, everything's safe. Bring it back up, tighten it, put my light on. Now, I think that should be quite a nice little setup for being in a loft, because a loft obviously is quite dangerous. You don't want to put your foot through and end up going down. So the fact that you can just hold it one-handed and it's not too heavy. I mean, you could say the light would be better over here because keep all the weight there instead of it being on this end. But obviously if you're holding it with two hands, then actually it's quite balanced. So yeah, so that's the setup that I'm quite happy with. I mean, if you didn't want to sync the sound together, obviously you'd want to connect the Rode then. And you could use that cable, go straight into the back of the Rode and then into the phone. Or alternative, you could use the SC7 cable and then connect it through that cable into the iPhone. The only thing I did notice though, I did have a bit of a hiccup, which has sort of put me off those cables, was there was like a popping sound. I did do a little demo run with this, and every time I spoke there was like a sort of pop, like sharp crack. It's quite quiet, but it was noticeable, and that just, I felt the audio was ruined. So I'll stick with this setup for the moment, I think. Yeah. So that's the rig, all set up and ready to go. So back into the 142-year-old attic that was built in 1879 with the SmallRig in hand. So here's a brief video with the popping or static sound that was heard when the Rode Video Micro was directly connected to the iPhone. In an attempt to do a very basic audio comparison, I had my wife, Debbie, read 8 paragraphs of a poem while I changed the recording method after every 2 paragraphs.
In a Devonshire lane as I trotted along, t'other day much in want of a subject for song, thinks I to myself I have hit on a strain, sure marriage is much like a Devonshire lane. In the first place 'tis long, and when once you are in it, it holds you as fast as the cage holds a linnet. For however rough and dirty the road may be found, drive forward you must, since there's no turning round. But though 'tis so long, it's not very wide, for 2 are the most that together can ride. And e'en there 'tis a chance, but they get in a pother, and jostle and cross and run foul of each other. Old Poverty greets them with mendicant looks, and Care pushes by them o'erladen with crooks. And Strife's grating wheels try between them to pass, or Stubbornness blocks up the way on her ass. Then the banks are so high both to the left hand and right, that they shut up the beauties around from the sight. And hence you'll allow 'tis an inference plain, that marriage is just like a Devonshire lane. But thinks I too these banks within which we are pent, with bud, blossom and berry are richly besprent. And the conjugal fence, which forbids us to roam, looks lovely when decked with the comforts of home. In the rock's gloomy crevice the bright holly grows, the ivy waves fresh o'er the withering rose, and the evergreen love of a virtuous wife smooths the roughness of care, cheers the winter of life. Then long be the journey and narrow the way, I'll rejoice that I've seldom a turnpike to pay, and whate'er others thinks be the last to complain, though marriage is just like a Devonshire lane. In a Devonshire lane as I trotted along, all right, go away.
Oh, love. I'll go beyond. No, I can't fit mine.
Right. Will you stop it, Mark?
Love, you're supposed to be. I was looking away so you could concentrate.
Yeah, but you're putting me off by doing it.
I'll go behind the screen. So you were watching iPhone in a SmallRig cage, and this was part 5, the 1879 Attic. And thank you for watching, and hope you found this video of some interest. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in March 2021. I can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Coats and Gators.